John Wayne sort of squints at it, looks at me, and I thought, oh man, I'm screwed now. People were really careful around him, and they gave him space. He was the Duke.
Hollywood's golden age, dazzled with glamour, fame, and unforgettable performances. But behind the silver screen, not all stars were heroes. Ron Howard now lifts the curtain, revealing 6 actors whose cruelty, arrogance, and dark deeds shocked everyone who worked with them. These were men and women who hid their nastiness behind charm and fame, turning sets into places of fear and intimidation. Let's uncover the sinister side of Hollywood's brightest stars, where talent met terror and legends masked true evil. The truth behind the golden shine. For most people, Hollywood's golden age feels like a dream frozen in time. But behind that glow, behind the soft lights and the applause, there was a darker truth. It was a world where fame forgave everything, and silence was the price of survival. Ron Howard, known for his kindness and calm personality, grew up watching that golden era through the eyes of a young actor and later as a director. He admired the creativity, the art, and the storytelling. But as he matured, he began to see the cracks beneath the surface. Whenever people spoke about the good old days of Hollywood, his smile would fade. To him, that age was not golden at all. It was polished on the outside, but rotten within. In interviews, Howard has often said that behind the glamour lived stories of cruelty, exploitation, and power that destroyed lives quietly. The studio system of the 1930s and 1940s controlled everything. Actors signed their lives away to powerful executives. Women were told to stay silent if they wanted to keep working. Contracts were used as chains, and fame became both a crown and a cage. Public images were carefully crafted. The stars looked flawless, their scandals buried under money and influence. The truth rarely reached the newspapers because studios owned not only actors, but also the stories about them. In private conversations and later interviews, Howard described how learning about the hidden lives of some Hollywood legends changed him. He realized that the same men who inspired millions on screen were capable of cruelty when the cameras stopped rolling. They were heroes on film, but predators in reality. Fame had made them untouchable, and the world had celebrated them for it. Howard once said that it took him years to understand how this culture worked. He remembered reading old trial records, memoirs, and letters that exposed the reality behind the myths. What he found shook him deeply. The world that once seemed magical became terrifying. He saw that power in Hollywood was not just about art or storytelling, it was about control. And those who controlled others often did it without guilt or shame. What makes his perspective powerful is his honesty. He never wanted revenge or gossip. He wanted the truth. By speaking about these dark stories, Howard hoped people would see that art can be beautiful even when its creators are not. He wanted future filmmakers to build an industry where respect mattered more than power, where no one was silenced by fear, and where kindness was valued more than fame. When he finally decided to share the names of those who hid behind their glory, it shocked many. These were people the world still admired, faces still printed on posters and celebrated in retrospectives. Yet their real stories told something very different. To Howard, the most painful lesson of all was that evil does not always wear a cruel expression. Sometimes it smiles at you from the silver screen. He called them the monsters protected by the spotlight. And once he began to speak, there was no turning back. The truth was too heavy to ignore. The first name Ron Howard revealed was once a beloved hero, a man who could charm anyone with a grin and a sword. But behind that smile was a predator who turned Hollywood's dream into a nightmare. Errol Flynn. Before there was James Bond or Jack Sparrow, there was Errol Flynn, the original screen adventurer. With his sword in hand and his irresistible grin, he became Hollywood's symbol of charm, bravery, and adventure. Audiences adored him. He was the hero who always won, the man who seemed to live for danger and romance. But behind that daring smile and flashing eyes lived a man who treated life like a game, and people like pieces to be used and thrown away. Errol Flynn was born in Tasmania in 1909. He came from a privileged but restless background. He was intelligent, wild, and always chasing thrill after thrill. When he arrived in Hollywood during the 1930s, it was as if destiny had chosen him. His looks, his confidence, and his reckless spirit made him an instant star. Warner Brothers found in him the perfect leading man, a mix of danger and seduction. His breakout film, Captain Blood, in 1935, turned him into a household name overnight. Hollywood built an empire around his face, but behind the glamour, his real life was falling into chaos. Flynn lived fast. His nights were filled with alcohol, substances, and parties that lasted until dawn. Women were drawn to him, and he bragged about his affairs openly. He believed fame made him untouchable. But that illusion began to crumble in 1942 when two teenage girls, Peggy Satterlee and Betty Hansen, accused him of abuse. The news spread like fire. Every newspaper printed his name. The trial became one of the most sensational cases of the decade. Reporters crowded the courtroom. Fans stood outside holding signs that said, "We believe in Flynn." Warner Brothers hired the best lawyers money could buy. Witnesses vanished mysteriously. During the hearings, Flynn smiled and laughed as if it were all a show. He flirted with the jury, joked with journalists, and mocked the accusations as lies made up to destroy him. And in the end, he was acquitted. The system had done what it always did: protect the star, not the victims. But inside Hollywood, people knew the truth. Rumors spread of more encounters, more young girls, and more nights of reckless cruelty. In private letters later discovered after his death, Flynn bragged about his conquests and mocked those who feared him. The charm that audiences adored had turned into a weapon. He was no longer a hero. He was a predator hiding behind applause. His fall was slow but certain. Alcohol became his only companion. He borrowed money constantly, lost his fortune, and aged far beyond his years. Friends described him as a man eaten alive by his own arrogance. He traveled from one country to another, trying to recapture his fame, but his body and mind were destroyed. In 1959, at the age of 50, Errol Flynn collapsed in Vancouver and died of heart failure. The autopsy revealed cirrhosis and stomach ulcers, the results of years of excess and self-destruction. For Ron Howard, discovering Flynn's story changed how he looked at fame forever. He once said that reading about the trial was a turning point. It taught him that Hollywood could turn monsters into gods if they smiled for the camera. When Ron Howard spoke of Errol Flynn, he didn't do it with anger. He did it with sorrow. He saw Flynn not just as a sinner, but as a symbol, a man who showed what happens when charm becomes power and power has no limits. Flynn died the way he lived, taking everything and giving nothing back. But not every Hollywood monster wore a smile. Some carried their evil in plain sight, through rage, domination, and fear. The next actor Ron Howard spoke of was a man whose fury consumed everyone who dared to stand near him: Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was everything Hollywood wanted in a leading man. Strong, proud, and unbreakable, he looked like someone born to conquer the world. On screen, he stood for justice and courage. His roles in Spartacus, Paths of Glory, and Champion made him one of the most admired actors of his time. But away from the cameras, the man who inspired millions with his heroism was very different. Douglas was born in 1916 to poor immigrant parents in New York. His real name was Ishur Danielovich. He grew up in hardship, selling snacks and doing odd jobs to survive. His rise to fame was not easy, and he carried the anger of those early struggles with him all his life. That anger made him ambitious, but it also made him dangerous. As his fame grew, so did his belief that he was above everyone else. People who worked with him often described his intensity as frightening. On set, he was known to shout, insult crew members, and humiliate anyone who disagreed with him. Actress Deborah Paget once said, "He didn't just want to dominate a scene, he wanted to dominate everyone in it." Director Stanley Kubrick, who worked with him on Paths of Glory and Spartacus, called him both brilliant and impossible. He was the hardest man to control, Kubrick once admitted. Douglas's drive made him successful, but it also turned him into a man who spread fear everywhere he went. There were also whispers that went far beyond anger or ego. For decades, rumors followed him about an incident that changed many people's view of him forever. In the summer of 1955, a young actress named Natalie Wood was assaulted at the famous Chateau Marmont Hotel. She was only 16. For years, no one dared to name the man involved. Then, in 2018, Natalie's sister, Lana Wood, revealed in her memoir that the attacker was Kirk Douglas. She said her sister had told her the truth shortly after it happened, but had been warned never to speak out. The claim shocked Hollywood and reopened old wounds that the industry had buried for decades. Ron Howard later said that learning about the accusations against Douglas made him realize how Hollywood had taught the world to worship its villains. Even as Douglas grew older and tried to show a softer side, the anger never left him. He wrote books about his life and claimed he had found peace, but those who knew him said his temper never truly disappeared. In 1996, he received an honorary Oscar for his lifetime of achievement. The audience applauded, but for Ron Howard, it was a strange moment. He saw an old man smiling on stage, but behind that smile was a life filled with broken trust, fear, and silence. It was, in Howard's words, a standing ovation for a man who had outrun his own demons. When Douglas died in 2020 at the age of 103, tributes poured in. People called him a legend, a pioneer, a hero of cinema. But beneath those glowing words, the shadow of his past still lingered. The same industry that once protected him now whispered about his cruelty, his arrogance, and the secrets he carried to his grave. Howard once said, "He lived like a fighter, and he died believing he won." But behind that victory was a battlefield filled with pain that others had to carry. Kirk Douglas's story became a warning that sometimes the strongest heroes on screen are the most broken men off it. If Kirk Douglas ruled through rage, the next Hollywood legend ruled through something colder. Her power came not from strength, but from cruelty wrapped in beauty. The woman Ron Howard called the Queen of Cruelty destroyed lives not with fists, but with fear. Faye Dunaway. Faye Dunaway was the kind of star Hollywood dreams about. She had the face of an angel and the confidence of a queen. When she appeared on screen, everything stopped. Her performance in Bonnie and Clyde made her a symbol of boldness and beauty, and her role in Chinatown showed her power as an actress who could mix elegance with mystery. Faye Dunaway was born in 1941 in Bascom, Florida. Her journey from a small town to the top of Hollywood was fast and dazzling. She was intelligent, talented, and fearless. Directors loved her passion for detail, but that same passion often became a storm that no one could stop. On every film set she joined, people admired her brilliance but feared her temper. Crew members whispered about her tantrums, her harsh words, and the way she treated assistants as if they were beneath her. One of the clearest examples of her cruelty came during the filming of Mommy Dearest in 1981. The film told the story of actress Joan Crawford, a woman known for her own abusive and controlling nature. Ironically, Dunaway's behavior during filming began to mirror the character she played. Co-star Rutanya Alda later said, "You could feel the fear on set. Everyone was waiting for her to explode. She would throw objects, scream at makeup artists, and refuse to work until every light and camera angle made her look flawless." Director Frank Perry later admitted he almost quit the project because of her constant outbursts. Dunaway's cruelty was not limited to one film. On the set of The Wicked Lady, she reportedly slapped a cameraman. During Don Juan DeMarco, she insulted assistants and delayed filming for hours. Her behavior became so unbearable that some directors refused to work with her again. Her former manager, Jay Bernstein once said, "Faye doesn't just play divas, she becomes them." Her talent was undeniable, but her reputation soon overshadowed her performances. By the late 1990s, Hollywood began to turn away from her. Roles disappeared, calls stopped coming, and her name became a warning among producers. People said she was too difficult, too controlling, too cruel. She still appeared at events dressed in elegance, but the fear in others' eyes had turned into avoidance. In 2011, when she was fired from a Broadway revival of Tea at 5, she blamed everyone but herself. The same drive that once made her a star had now left her alone. There was also something tragic about her downfall. The same industry that once worshipped her now whispered behind her back. When her name appeared in retrospectives or award shows, she was often absent. Few dared to invite her, and even fewer dared to work with her. It was as if Hollywood had finally punished her, but far too late. She became a ghost of her own success, admired for her past, but feared for her presence. Howard once said, "Faye chased perfection until she forgot compassion. Power without grace always turns to poison." Her story was not only about one woman's cruelty, but about an entire culture that allowed cruelty to be seen as strength. Faye Dunaway had everything: beauty, fame, talent, but she lost the one thing that made art meaningful: empathy. But cruelty was not limited to those who ruled through vanity. Some built their power on something far more dangerous: hate disguised as patriotism. The next legend Ron Howard exposed was Hollywood's greatest symbol of masculinity, a man who carried a flag in one hand and prejudice in the other: John Wayne. John Wayne was more than a movie star. To millions, he symbolized America itself: strong, brave, and unshakable. On screen, he was the fearless cowboy who stood up for justice, his deep voice and steady eyes inspiring trust. But for Ron Howard, who grew up watching him on television, the truth behind the legend was far darker. Behind the cowboy hat and calm smile was a man filled with hate, pride, and cruelty. Born Marion Morrison in 1909 in Iowa, Wayne began his career as a prop man before rising to fame with the 1939 film Stagecoach. Hollywood built him into a national treasure, the embodiment of American courage and strength. Known as the Duke, Wayne loved the image. But those who worked with him said the real man was harsh, arrogant, and often cruel. He ruled film sets with fear. Crew members who made mistakes were humiliated in front of others, and anyone who challenged him was replaced. Wayne's intolerance extended to women and minorities. During Westerns, he mocked Native American actors and humiliated them during breaks. He believed his vision of America was the only correct one, seeing dissenters as enemies. In public, his words revealed a prejudiced heart. A 1971 Playboy interview shocked fans. He openly endorsed white supremacy, dismissed Native Americans for wanting their land, and claimed Black Americans were not yet ready for self-governance. For years, people ignored or excused his comments, saying he was a man of his time. But to Ron Howard, there was nothing honorable about hate. Howard later said that Wayne's words showed the danger of fame mixed with arrogance. The same man who played heroes on screen had no compassion in real life. He wore his patriotism like armor, but it was only a disguise for prejudice. He saw progress as weakness and compassion as betrayal. Even great directors struggled to control him. On the set of The Searchers, he clashed with director John Ford over the portrayal of his character, Ethan Edwards, a Confederate soldier filled with racism and vengeance. Wayne wanted the character to appear sympathetic, while Ford wanted the audience to see his darkness. The result was one of the most complex westerns ever made, and one that revealed more truth about Wayne than he intended. In the film, the line between the actor and the character was almost invisible. As Howard once said, "You could not tell where the role ended and the man began." Despite the controversies, Wayne remained adored by millions. He received an Oscar for True Grit in 1970 and continued to speak as if he were the voice of America. but his body was breaking down. Years of smoking and stress caught up with him. In 1979, he died of stomach cancer at 72. Even after his death, debates about his legacy continued. Many still saw him as a hero, while others saw him as a man who represented everything Hollywood and America needed to outgrow. Ron Howard saw John Wayne as a warning, not a hero. He said that Wayne's story proved how fame can turn hate into power when no one dares to challenge it. The image of John Wayne still stands tall in film history, but for Howard, it stands on cracked ground. The cowboy who claimed to defend freedom had no mercy for those who didn't fit his idea of it. His legend survived, but the man behind it never deserved the praise. Howard summed it up simply: power built on prejudice doesn't age into wisdom, it curdles into bitterness. For him, Wayne's story showed how easily America confused confidence with cruelty, and how the spotlight could turn intolerance into glory. But while John Wayne's power came from pride and prejudice, the next figure Ron Howard revealed was something even more disturbing. He was not just cruel, he was a criminal who hid behind genius. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski's story is one of the darkest chapters in Hollywood history. He was celebrated as a genius, a man whose films captured fear, loneliness, and human weakness with extraordinary skill. Movies like Rosemary's Baby and Chinatown made him one of the most admired directors in the world. But behind that brilliance lived a man haunted by his past and consumed by his own evil choices. Ron Howard once said that Polanski's story was proof that talent could hide monsters more effectively than any disguise. Polanski's early life was marked by tragedy. He was born in Paris in 1933 to Polish parents, both of whom were Jewish. When World War II broke out, his family moved to Poland, where they were trapped by the Nazi invasion. His mother died in Auschwitz, and Polanski survived by hiding in barns and cellars, running from soldiers who would have killed him. That trauma shaped his mind. It gave his films their haunting tone, but it also left scars that never healed. As an adult, he turned his pain into art, creating movies that explored fear and control. People called him a visionary. In 1969, tragedy struck again when his pregnant wife, Sharon Tate, was killed by followers of Charles Manson. The world saw Polanski as a broken man, a victim of unimaginable loss. Sympathy surrounded him, and his fame only grew. But less than a decade later, the sympathy turned to shock. In March 1977, he was arrested in Los Angeles for the sexual assault of a 13-year-old girl named Samantha Geimer. The crime took place at actor Jack Nicholson's home during a photo shoot. Polanski gave the girl champagne and substances before assaulting her. The evidence was clear. He was charged with multiple counts, including sodomy. In court, Polanski pleaded guilty to one count of unlawful sexual intercourse with a minor. Before he could be sentenced, he fled the United States and never returned. He escaped to France, where he was protected by citizenship and powerful friends in the film industry. For years, he lived freely, directing films and attending festivals, while his victim was left to rebuild her life. Hollywood's reaction was divided. Some people condemned him, but many defended him, saying that he was a tortured artist who deserved understanding, not punishment. Famous names like Woody Allen and Harvey Weinstein openly supported him. To Ron Howard, that reaction revealed the deepest hypocrisy of the entertainment world. Howard later said, "It broke my heart that people could cheer for a man who destroyed a child's life." When Polanski won an Oscar in 2003 for The Pianist, the audience at the Dolby Theater stood up and applauded. He was not there to accept it, but their cheers filled the room. Howard refused to clap. He said he could not celebrate talent when it was built on the suffering of others. "I thought of that girl, 13 years old, alone, and how that applause must sound to her," he later told a magazine. For him, that night symbolized everything that had gone wrong with Hollywood, a place where brilliance excused cruelty. Even decades later, Polanski remained a free man. He continued to make films in Europe and received awards from festivals that chose to separate art from morality. In 2020, when he won France's César Award for Best Director, hundreds of women walked out of the ceremony in protest. It was a moment of long-delayed justice, a sign that the world was finally refusing to ignore his crimes. Howard called it justice arriving late, but not too late. He believed that silence was what had allowed people like Polanski to flourish for so long. Polanski's life shows the dangerous belief that success can erase sin. He turned his pain into power and used his reputation to escape consequences. His story became a mirror for Hollywood itself, a reflection of how easily people forgive evil when it is dressed in talent. Ron Howard often said that Polanski's case was the clearest proof that genius and goodness are not the same. A monster doesn't become less monstrous because he can frame a shot, he said. But while Roman Polanski's genius hid evil behind art, another Hollywood icon hid it behind laughter and joy. Mickey Rooney. For generations, Mickey Rooney was the face of joy in Hollywood. His grin, his boundless energy, and his boyish charm made him one of the most beloved stars of the Golden Age. He sang, danced, and joked his way into people's hearts, becoming a symbol of innocence and happiness. But as Ron Howard once said, sometimes the brightest smiles hide the darkest lives. Behind Rooney's cheerful face was a man consumed by greed, addiction, and cruelty. A man who made the world laugh while breaking the people closest to him. Mickey Rooney was born Joseph Yule Jr. in 1920. He started performing when he was just a toddler, joining his parents on stage in vaudeville shows. Hollywood noticed his talent early, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already a household name. Films like Babes in Arms and National Velvet turned him into the all-American boy every family adored. He was short in height, but big in spirit, a living picture of hope during the Great Depression. In 1939, he was the highest-paid actor in America, earning more than even Clark Gable or Spencer Tracy. Rooney grew up in a world that never let him be a child. The studios owned him. They shaped his image, controlled his money, and demanded constant performance. He worked long hours and was treated like a product, not a person. As he grew older, that childhood pressure turned into self-destruction. He gambled away millions of dollars, drank heavily, and became known for his temper and arrogance. He married 8 times, cheated constantly, and left behind a trail of broken relationships. His second wife, the beautiful Ava Gardner, once said, "He may have been small in size, but his ego was the biggest thing in the world." The people who worked with him often saw a different side of the cheerful star. On set, he could be charming one moment and cruel the next. Judy Garland, his closest friend and frequent co-star, once described him as unpredictable and emotionally rough. She loved him like a brother, but his selfishness and thoughtless remarks hurt her deeply. Many believed he played a part in pushing her deeper into depression during her later years. Ron Howard said that when he read about Rooney's life, he felt a mix of sadness and disgust. He was the face of joy, but he spread misery to everyone around him, Howard once reflected. Rooney's decline was long and painful. His fame faded in the 1950s as Hollywood moved on to new faces. He tried to rebuild his career on television, in theater, and even in small movie roles, but he could never regain the magic of his youth. By the end of his life, he was nearly penniless. He accused his stepson and 8th wife, Jan Chamberlain, of elder abuse, claiming they had stolen his money and isolated him from the world. It was a sad ending for someone who had once been America's favorite entertainer. When Rooney died in 2014 at the age of 93, his estate was worth less than $20,000. His funeral was small, arranged by friends who raised money to give him a proper burial. For Ron Howard, Mickey Rooney's story was the final piece of the puzzle. After learning about Flynn's arrogance, Douglas's rage, Dunaway's cruelty, Wayne's prejudice, and Polanski's crimes, Rooney's tale showed the last form of evil, the one that hides behind laughter. Howard once said, "He made the world laugh while he was dying inside." Maybe that's the saddest kind of evil of all. To him, Rooney's story was not just about one man's fall, but about the illusion of the Golden Age itself. The stars were shining on the outside, but behind them were shadows deeper than anyone wanted to see. What do you think about the dark, hidden side of Hollywood and its legends? Share your thoughts in the comments below.